Look at that. That is meatloaf with macaroni and cheese. Hey, this is just a simple country staple in the United States. If you want to learn how to make this and to make it better than your neighbor, watch this video. You're going to get some really good tips. Man, I can't wait to dig in. There we have it. Now, I decided to change this with all kinds of flavors, and the first real successful and good meatloaf I ever did, I simply mimicked Italian meatballs, which I really liked. You know, hey, those tasted great, and much of the ingredients were very similar. It was mostly just in the seasonings that we changed things. And so that's what we're going to do here, is I'm going to add in a whole lot of stuff. Now let me show you, besides a good quality ground beef, this one's very lean, this is a 90-10 ground sirloin, that's about 1.5 pounds of it. Okay, so to that, to top it with, I'm going to use a tomato sauce. I've got some sauce here. I've got some tomatoes I'm going to top it with, and some onion slices. But I'm also going to put this onion minced in the meat. And I'm going to fine dice some of these wonderful jalapenos. We're going to put that into the meat. Also, minced garlic. That goes into the meat. We have bacon bits. And this is ground Parmesan right here. This I like to use because it's dry, it absorbs liquid well, and it makes as a good binder. Because this one I'm not going to use any ground or any breadcrumbs or anything like that as a binder. I might, if necessary, use an egg in it to add some liquid, but I'm debating that. Also, I'm going to put some shredded Parmesan into that meat mixture to give it a little bit different texture, also to just give it a little more pronounced flavor. Now to flavor things, I've got paprika, oregano, tarragon, basil, and lavender, along with salt, black pepper. All of that's going to be into the meat, okay, every bit of it. And one of the things about cooking with lots of spices and herbs, in time you sort of learn not to be afraid of using them, but you also learn certain ones have really robust and overbearing flavors. And as you learn that, you'll learn what to tone down on and what to pick up on to get a good balance in these flavors. As a general rule, something I like to tell people, oregano is really pungent. Compared to basil, which is rather sweet, and oregano is quite bitter, it's nice to use about half as much of the oregano as basil, and I find that complements the two of them. Lavender is a pretty showy flavor also, but in this one I just thought it would stand out really nice considering some of the other goodies that I'm putting into it. Other stuff that you can use, if you like bell pepper, put bell pepper in there. I don't like bell peppers, they make me gassy. Poblanos would work really good in it, or most any other kind of chili or pepper. Onions of different sorts that you can put in there. You could put leeks in it. You could put broccoli or carrot in it if you really wanted to. Go ahead and experiment. It's not going to hurt. Try some celery in that. Put anything that you would like. Seasonings that a lot of folks like to use, people like to use the Worcestershire sauce to flavor it. So, make it as you wish. Now if you notice back here, I've also got some cheddar cheese. The cheddar cheese is the way that I like to do this. I like to press my meat out flat after I make my mixture, and then I put the grated cheddar over the top of it and swirl it into a log, and then seal it down well on the ends and the edges so that the cheese won't leak out as it's baking. Put that in my casserole dish and bake it like that, and it just makes this beautiful cheese swirl in the middle of the meat that really delights people, and it's a good flavor that goes well with all of the rest of it. So we're going to get into how to do this in a moment. I'm going to show you how I mix it all up, and we'll move on from there. Okay, we are back to work on our meatloaf. Now, I wanted to show you some technique, and the first one is how to mince garlic, how to do this really quick. Well, if you don't have a garlic press, and those are really neat items, then what you can do is you can use your knife to fine mince garlic. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to crush the cloves. I'm going to do that by placing the knife blade over it, turning it so the edge is down. That way I don't have to worry about cutting my palm. Sometimes because of this angle, garlic will shoot out the other side. If a little of that happens, don't worry about it. Life goes on. Okay? Give it a good smack. You see there how that crushed that? I'm going to do it again. Alright? And once more. Now, this is the start of our mincing. If I was going to just be doing some stewing, I could throw it in just like that and it would be just fine, because it's going to be cooking down for a long time and it would turn it into mush. However, this dish, I want it to be little itty bitty particles dispersed throughout the meat. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this by using a rocking motion where I raise the knife up and push it back down, and we're going to go like this, but we're going to do it really fast. When you're going to do this type of mincing, make sure you get your thumb underneath, okay? Put your finger on top of the back of the blade to give it a slight downward pressure, not hard, and this simple motion for mincing. Now, you can speed that up, and with time you'll get really good. Look at this nice fine mince I'm producing. Now, I'll keep that up just for a moment more. So I can get all of my particles the size that I want them. Isn't that convenient? Great way to take care of your garlic. Okay, now I'll take that garlic and I'll throw it straight down in my bowl with my meat mixture. Now, make sure whenever you have knives to keep them just razor sharp. The sharper a knife is, honestly, the safer it is. Are you more likely to cut yourself with it? Well, a minor cut can easily be taken care of. A major laceration or being stabbed, which is more likely with a dull knife, is very hard to take care of and very expensive. Now, I want to fine mince some onions, so I'm going to need some good thin slices. Again, what a sharp knife will help you with, making good thin slices. See those? Now, if you're going to slice an onion this way, which is a dangerous way to slice an onion, make sure that knife is very sharp. Pay attention to where your fingers are so you don't cut anything. There we go. Now, the rest of this I'm going to be saving. Let me get one more slice. I'm going to save to put over the top of my meat loaf. And that's going to be on top of it with some sliced tomato. Now, again, I'm just going to continue that cutting motion. I want to reverse it, run the opposite side. There we go. Look at that nice fine mix on there. Looks good. That escaped, didn't it? So I'm going to take this, a couple of handfuls of, we'll put it right in our meat mixture. Now this is going to provide moisture in that meat mixture. As the onions begin to heat and give off their moisture, it'll add that to the whole meatloaf and it'll give it a softer texture. Now I like to use a good sweet onion when I do that. These are Texas sweet onions. And I thought it would be most appropriate for this dish. Okay. Now something else I want inside would be some jalapeno. Now, these are some big ones. How about, let's handle these one at a time. Now if you notice the spines inside of here, let's just slice those out. That'll remove most of the seed as well. Okay. Some people like to rinse these out. Others say no, you wash out too much flavor. You know what? Do it the way you want. If you want to rinse it, rinse it. If you're worried about losing a little bit of the flavor, well, don't. Personally, I like to rinse mine just slightly. It does help to remove some of the excess oleo resin. If If you notice, I'm trying not to grab the inside of this with my fingers. These oils can easily be transferred to your face or other sensitive locations on your body, and it makes life rather uncomfortable, okay? Again, the right kind of knives make all the difference in the world. If you keep what you need on hand and keep it good and sharp, everything always goes nice and smooth. Now you notice when I'm cutting, you see what I do with my fingers? I curl them under and I put the side of the knife right up against it. My finger acts as a cutting guide, so I just slide them slightly backward across the vegetable, and as I do that, my knife blade comes down each time at about the same spot, and I get nice even strips that way. Simple cutting technique. Okay, slowly move my hand back. A slight rocking motion to the blade. Got it? Now, let's make some little bitty pieces here. Again, you notice the fingers are turned under. If you don't do this and keep that thumb back, you're going to end up cutting yourself. Okay? I'm trying to cut nice and slow so everybody can see exactly how this works. Now, when you're running your finger down the side of a blade like that, use utmost caution. You don't notice, but my finger is touching back here on the blade and it never goes over that edge. If it does, I would slice myself wide open. So, keep your finger back away from the edge of the blade. You can use a blade like a trowel to pick things up if you wish, and to transfer them. Works really well. See there? It's going to make a nice addition to that meatloaf. I think I got just the right amount. I'm going to withhold the second one. Now, something else that my meatloaf needed. Let's move this out of the way. Here's what we have. Garlic, and our meat, onions, and the jalapeno, all in there together. So let's add in some bacon. That's going to give it a nice woody flavor also, that smoked bacon. Okay, we need a little bit of a binder in here. Okay, now I want to do something I don't often do, and that's I'm going to use olive oil right straight in to my meatloaf. Okay, shredded Parmesan. There we go. Now let's get down to the seasonings. As I measure these out, I'm going to give you kind of proportions about what I'm using. Okay? These have shaker lids, but when I'm measuring like this, I measure into the palm of my hand. Okay? Roughly a teaspoon. Now, if you don't believe that, let's put it to the test. I said roughly a teaspoon. What do we have there? Looks like roughly a teaspoon to me. Okay. Eventually you learn how to measure into your hand. And if you take a teaspoon of ingredient and put it in your hand and get a visual on what it looks like, this will help you do this in the future. Okay. So that is roughly a teaspoon of oregano. Now remember, I told you before, oregano has a tendency to be robust, and it really comes through in the flavor of meats. Lavender. This is a very light flavor and not something you would normally think of being used in, oh, it smells very good, in a meatloaf. However, in this meatloaf, guess what? Again, about a teaspoon. Basil. Now, the basil I'm going to use about between 2 and 3 teaspoons. There's 1. There's 2. Look at that. So, 2 teaspoons of basil. And I like herbs that are sweet. They really lend to a dish. Especially something that's baked or stewed. They just do wonders in those things. Tarragon. Okay, I've got about a teaspoon and a half of French tarragon here. Alright. No, these are not fresh, but a lot of folks don't keep fresh at home, and so I don't cook in that way. I like to keep something here that most folks are going to have, and that way I can teach you what to do with what you would likely have. Paprika. This is a neat tasting little chili that has a tendency to warm up the flavor of food without adding heat to it. So we got a little over a teaspoon of paprika there. Let's put that in there. And if you're wondering where I got those wonderful little spice jars, let me tell you. I had to put together my own spice setup because nobody seemed to sell what I wanted. So I just found some jars that are being sold. There we go, about a teaspoon of salt. And I'm just going to dump in some black pepper there, and that's going to come up to about, 3/4 of a teaspoon. Away my black pepper. There we go. Now, have a wonderful looking meat mixture here. When it comes to mixing meatloaf, you can get a spoon and try to combine all that and fumble around with it. But let's get realistic. Just putting your hand down in there and mashing it up, that seems to work best of all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab me some gloves so I can dig into this without having to worry about anything in my skin or anything getting into that dish. And I recommend y'all get some gloves just for cooking. We now have our meat mixture. I got my gloves. It's time to get it all mashed together. And just work this like you would bread dough. Of course, if you haven't worked bread dough, then watch simply. Take my knuckles and I mash it straight down into that meat mixture. Forcing the vegetables in, mixing it all together, getting all of the herbs and spices distributed evenly. That's the important thing. You don't want someone to bite into a huge clump of a single flavor that would be overwhelming to their palate. Okay, that would be very, very unpleasant. Okay, so don't do that to anyone. Don't do it to yourself. Okay? Isn't that nice looking? Just a little bit more. I don't want to overwork this. I don't want it coming too dense. Now, the next step is I want to take this and press it out into a flat, round shape on a cutting board. And then we're going to top it with some cheese. I'll roll it into that beautiful log that I was telling you about just a little bit ago. And then we're going to put it in our casserole dish and dress it to be baked. Okay, we have us a nice little surface. Take your meat that you've put together, and if it has a little bit of a crumbly texture to it, that's a good thing. That means it's going to stay just right after it's been cooked. You don't want this to come out too dense, and sometimes these things have a tendency to do that. Other fillers that you can use in your meatloaf, consider these items, and they all work really nice. You can put oats in your meatloaf. It's a good healthy filler. It is very good for helping to control cholesterol and helps to balance some of the fats that are in this. Now if you notice, I put olive oil in there. That's another thing that you can do to help balance fats. And how does that help? Okay, here's the long and short of it. Okay, when it comes to fats, olive oil contains a lot of monounsaturated fat. Monounsaturated fat has this really neat quality to it. It has a tendency to bond to saturated fats. Thus, when you have saturated fats in your body, these monounsaturates will bond to them. Monounsaturates wash out of the body real well, where the saturated fats have a tendency to cling and build up. So what you're doing is you're balancing fats and making your dish a little bit more healthy. Okay? Now, there we have it. I have finished with that. It's time to sprinkle some of our cheese over the top of this. And I'm going to remove my glove for this part of it. There we go. And don't you just hate it when that happens. shredded this just before we got started with all of this, so I would have it ready. I'm using sharp cheddar here. You can use any cheese. If you want to do a cheddar jack combo, that would be good, or Monterey Jack, or pepper jack. Oh, yummy, that would be really good. Mozzarella will work in this. I do the mozzarella when I do the Italian styled meatloaf that I do, which is based on the Italian meatball. Okay, I have a good layer of cheese there. I'm going to go with that. We're going to roll this into a log next and place it into our casserole dish. Okay, I decided I want to get another glove on so I can finish this little job up. Now, there's no perfect way of doing this. You just kind of lift that edge and start rolling. Okay, you're going to have to support your meat as you do this. Now watch here. I want to seal my ends just a little bit. Okay, a little more. Making a nice little meat log or a loaf. Gee, it's actually looking like what it's named after. Imagine the audacity of someone doing that. There we go. Now, as I mentioned before, I'm going to make sure that the ends and that seam gets sealed really well. So let's mash those meats together. Just kind of poking it and working it in there. Make sure it's good and sealed. There we go. Pressing it a little. Wow, I just thought of another good ingredient for a meatloaf. It would be a different style of meatloaf than this, but capers. Capers would do great in a meatloaf. Okay, now I have a nice little pan here that I already have olive oil in. Just going to set this right down in there. You can tell I've done that a few times. Okay, we have our meatloaf in our pan. Now I'm going to dress it with the toppings. There are my gloves. You see the nice part about using gloves in the kitchen? There's no cleanup on your hands afterwards. You don't have to deal with that mess as you move right on to your next project. Now in this case, we're going to be topping it with our onion, tomatoes, and some tomato sauce, and I'm debating whether or not I want to put some sliced garlic on there, but I'm swinging away from it because I got so much garlic in the meat itself. So, I don't want it to be too garlicky. Grab a cutting board. Now, which do I want to do first, the onion or the tomato? The onion probably slice and lay over the tomatoes and everything a little bit better, so I'll start with them. Now, as I mentioned before, having a sharp knife and the importance of it, let me show you something else you can do when your knives are sharp enough. If you need to slice tomatoes, which are generally very delicate and soft, but you need to slice them super thin, a sharp enough knife will take off a sliver so thin, almost unhandleable. Let's do that again. There we go. See there? Just paper thin. You can do that if you wish. I want to get just slightly thicker. The beauty of this, we get those nice tomato slices all over this dish. And down in the sauce. Now, in addition to the sauce I'm putting on top of this, we're going to be putting in some wine. See how I use that slicing motion? I use the length of the blade. Use the length of the blade to your advantage, okay? That's going to be so tasty. Those fresh tomato slices down in it. Now, our onion. For this I'm going to want some good substantial slices, about 1/4 of an inch thick. Now, if you notice, I'm getting to this side of the blade, this side of the onion. The blade can easily slide backwards towards your hand. You want to avoid this part of it right here, okay? So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a simple cut through there to remove that. I'm going to half this, and then with them in halves, I can safely cut them. Look at that. See there? And I want it halved anyway. How convenient is that, right? So, little lessons in slicing. Let's decorate up our meat. Okay, now I want some big onion slices running right across the top of that meat. And I want that so that the flavor of that onion just cooks right down into the top, in addition to the minced onion that I have up inside of it. Oh, that's going to be really tasty. And this onion, as it washes over the meat, helps to change the flavor of it as it creates a wonderful sauce in the pan as well. There we go. Lots of onion in there. Now, our tomato sauce, our next thing. Take that and pour it right over the top. If you notice, I'm not using ketchup. Ew, yuck. No ketchup. No way. Good, wholesome ingredients. Tomato sauce. Looks like we're about ready on that. I think I'm going to top it with a little bit of salt, black pepper, and put it in an oven. But guess what? Today we're not cooking in the oven. We're going to put this out on the grill. I'm going to put a glass top on it after I let it smoke in the grill for, roughly, I'll let it smoke for about 20 minutes. 20, maybe 25. Then I'll cover it and finish baking it. And I want to keep my grill in the neighborhood of around 350 to 400 degrees. Okay? Cooking outside so we don't heat up the house. Okay, we are down to our final steps in preparing this to be cooked. I have here a broiling pan. Now what I'm going to do is take my broiling pan and place a good sum of water into the lower portion of it. Now I do this when I'm going to cook on the grill and I'm going to use a glass dish, or if I'm cooking on the grill and I'm doing a brisket or ribs, I will put the brisket or ribs up here and allow the smoke to circulate around them. And this is on the gas grill, by the way. And that way I don't have to worry about the meat drippings dropping down in the fire, starting a fire and then burning the meat. You don't want that to happen. So this stops that. But this also can protect a dish like this and add moisture into the cooking environment, which is sometimes helpful when you're grilling. In this case, we're going to be grilling with a little bit of smoke. This isn't going to heat up fast enough to affect the smoke, but by the time that water starts steaming, my smoke will be over. I'm going to cover that with a glass lid at that point, and we're going to allow all those wonderful flavors to marry. Now, we take our meatloaf, put it right on here. Now, like I mentioned before, we're going to use some wine. I have chosen for this one a white Zinfandel. Okay, so let's get a white Zin and pour it down in there. Yeah. Okay, now fill up our little moat down in there. That will make us a nice little sauce, and that was, I would say, somewhere around a half to 3/4 of a cup of white Zinfandel there. Okay, now over the top some salt. There we go. Size dish, you can be somewhat generous with the salt, but don't go overboard. And then a little black pepper to add to our sauce. Plus, what cooks out of that meat is going to make the most heavenly sauce. All of these ingredients together, you better believe it, this is a winner of a meatloaf. Okay, right there, just like that, it's ready to go on the grill. And I'm going to want my grill at about 350 to 400 degrees and smoky. So, that's going to be my next stop. Okay, looks like the right temp. There we go. Got nice smoke coming up out of there. Just going to let it smoke for a little while and finish cooking. This should take about 45 minutes. There we go. It has cooled and rested. If you'll notice, some of the cheddar has leaked out just a little bit, and that's sort of my little clue as to when it's finished. When I see the cheddar start to ooze a little, that's when it's time to come off the heat. You just set it aside, let it rest, and boom, look at that. But absolutely beautiful meatloaf. Okay, we're going to slice it up, let you see it that way. There you have it. One meatloaf, all set up, fixed up, and ready to go. I put a macaroni and cheese with it that's homemade. You can catch that recipe on one of my other videos. Anyway, give this a shot. It's good country cooking and absolutely guaranteed to satisfy.